Howdy, howdy, fellas. Today we're going to talk about Arrival. I have a guest with me right now. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Well, it's a special day because we're both named Nikko, huh? Except we spell it
Oh, yeah.
slightly different. So my name is Nikko. I do several different shows, several different podcasts, do some film reviews on TikTok as well, and I'm just thankful to be talking about this masterpiece. Not to bury the lead, but very excited and very very honored that you were open to having me on. So it's Nikko meets Nikko.
Oh, yeah. I definitely was fascinated. It was like, how does he say it, though? Because, like, I saw it spelled out, and I'm like, is that Nico or is it Nikko? Like, I couldn't tell.
What's funny is I spell it wrong. Yeah. What's funny is there shouldn't be two Ks, but that's how my parents did it because they didn't like know sound or phonetics. So I've just rolled with it.
So that's your real name. Okay. It's not my real name.
Oh, no?
No, I'm Nick.
I'm
Nicholas.
Wait. Okay, wait. Sorry, so am I. I thought you
okay.
It's like a real
I got you.
It's like a real thing people call me, not just for like the content and stuff. Like it's a real nickname, but my name is Nick. Wow. So
yeah, maybe one day I'll let everybody know why I'm called Nico.
One day.
It's a really dumb story, but you know, gotta save it for the fans.
Oh, absolutely. Always a content moment.
Yeah. So why did you pick Arrival for us to watch? Because you seemed very excited when you pitched it.
Oh, very excited, brother. Yeah. So for me, Arrival is I love film, love watching pretty much everything. But for me, Arrival was the first time where a movie hit me in a way that stuck with me for days, weeks, etc. When I first saw it back in 2016. It's a movie where the twist and the concept that we'll get into later just really hit me so hard, and it made me think about my own life a lot. At that moment in time, I was kind of going through a lot, and it kind of made me appreciate where I was at this moment in time, and then it was making me think about, you know, where I've been, where am I going to go, and if I could have seen everything, would I do it the same way? And it was actually the first film by Denis Villeneuve I saw. In his catalog. So that also brought me into him as a filmmaker, and that homie really don't miss. So it was also this great gateway into a whole other collection of awesome films. So it's just really the way I felt with this movie from an emotional standpoint. And now each time I watch it, I saw you tweeted, I think you were watching this like Tuesday or Wednesdays when you rewatched it, and you're like, so I'm about to cry the fourth time through.
I've cried too many times
I'm
this
like,
week,
I cry every time I watch it. So.
Yeah, I told my friends I was watching it, and like one of my friends, like he's super into movies as well, but like he was like, Arrival's mid. He doesn't like a lot of Denis movies, and I was like, I'm unironically like reevaluating my life decisions today, just because like when I watch that movie, it is like that conundrum of like, would you do it even if you know it's going to end? Because like that's a weird philosophy, or not philosophy, but idea that I've had all my life, and it's been a weird thing with like pets. I've always thought about that with like, I don't want to get a dog because it'll eventually die one day, and it's like a really stupid idea I've had always in my head. And then, you know, like I actually get a dog in my life, and within like a week, I'm like, oh, I don't care if this thing dies in 10 years. Every day with this thing is going to be awesome. And I'm sure that's how Amy Adams felt with that daughter.
1,000,000%. And that's the beauty of it, Nikko. I'm so glad you brought that up. Is it's that conundrum, right? Of like, if I know I'm going to experience this great tragedy and great pain, well, then of course, yeah, I'm not going to do it. But it's such a human thing to want to feel, right? So even in your case with that dog, like the positive emotion and joy and love you're going to get out of having that animal is worth it, even though you know it's going to end, unfortunately, in tragedy. It's would you rather feel those two ultimate feelings, or quite literally not feel at all? And I think that you actually have a great comparison there with what Lois experiences in the film, and she has this beautiful burden in a way, as I like to say it, because she has the ability to not only see everything that's happening and saves the world in a sense, but at the same time she knows that her life with her husband and her daughter is going to end in tragedy, but she does choose to do it anyway, and that's a very human thing to do, is choosing to feel something even if you know it's finite.
Yeah, I kind of like how they made Jeremy Renner's character too. Like at the end, like it's the big twist that they're married later in life. But I like how he ends up leaving, and it sounds like it was because he wasn't ready to accept that information.
Yeah, and that's really the other, if you're looking at it from a polarizing standpoint, he's the other side of it, right? He can't cope with that information. He hasn't seen it. And it is almost ironic in a way because Amy Adams' character, Louise, is a linguist, and the whole movie is about communication and how important it is and how crucial it is, and how in the movie it's the lack of communication that leads to so many of these negative events happening with the way the countries are reacting. And then it's her choice to be honest to her husband and actually communicate, do the thing that the movie is trying to tell you to do. And that ultimately ends up with him leaving because he can't handle it in the way she has. Because unfortunately, he won't get to, in his mind, be able to live in all those moments all at once. So it's tragic, but it's beautiful. And I'm with you. I like how they kind of sneak his character and they really keep you guessing the whole time. And when he is finally revealed to be the father and the husband in the last 5 minutes of the movie or so, it's why I think this movie's masterpiece is it's this crazy emotional payoff because it's both positive and negative at the same time. You're so happy and satisfied that it is him, but then ultimately he's going to leave and their daughter's going to die and Luis is going to be alone in the world. So it's
Yeah.
so bittersweet. He knows how to gut punch you, man. Denny is he's a professional gut puncher, let me tell you.
Oh Lord, you don't have to tell me after seeing all of his films a few times now. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely like love how they initially like one of the first problems I had with this movie when I watched it the first time, like I've watched it 3 times now, was I didn't like Jeremy Renner's character because he felt kind of useless and just kind of like, oh, he suddenly is a husband of Louise, okay. Then I've watched it a few times and you start to realize like he's there for a reason, and it's to kind of paint the picture of like the other perspective here, because it is like, as you said, it's a burden, but it's also a beautiful burden. And I like how Luis is willing to take on this burden. But you see another character, like you can kind of emphasize or empathize with, like, okay, that's a human reaction. He's scared of that information. If he knows, like, why would he? Like, you can at least understand it. But I like having both of these characters in this movie, and I totally take back my criticism the first time I watched it. I'd be like, oh, Jeremy Renner's character is kind of stupid in this movie.
And that's actually a valid point too, because the first time I saw it, I wasn't crazy about him until the end, until the reveal, and I'm like, oh, it was all worth it. And I think this movie does benefit from rewatches because the first time we're we're experiencing the unraveling mystery that Luis is, and then when you rewatch it, it's once again, it's why this movie is so powerful to me, is like the rewatchability. When you go back and watch this again, you've unlocked the weapon yourself, right? Is that time. So now
Mm-hmm.
when you watch Arrival again, you know everything that's going to happen. You have a choice if you want to hit play and keep watching it and finishing it, right? So then I start seeing the subtle ways they work Renner in the story the second time around. Because I will agree with you, the first time around, he's like, oh, the smart, semi-charming mathematician dude, and oh, he's the husband at the end. It's beautiful, it's sad. But the second time around, like, he's able to give the answer of the non-zero sum rule, and that has a really nice, that allows Louise to have that nice moment with her daughter before she goes upstairs upset, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
he is like this perfect supporting piece for her. And at the end of the movie, I think it's brilliant that he's not as up in front, because and I didn't really notice this till I've seen this movie a lot of times, but until one of my recent watches, where at the end of the film, when you finally see him and Hannah calls him daddy, the editing is so smart by Joe Walker here, because when she says daddy, it right away cuts to Louise turning and looking at Ian, and she almost looks heartbroken. Like in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
oh, wait, this is my husband. And it's almost fitting that the whole movie we're like, why is this guy here? And then at the end, you're like, that's why he's been here the whole time. And his story is almost to come, right? That we're never going to see, but we know it is the highest of highs and then unbelievably low of lows.
I mean, I will say I'm extremely jealous of you that you were able to see this in a theater, because I definitely wasn't like super into movies when going into the theater, probably till like 2018. Like, for other than that, I've always been like a movie watcher, but I haven't been like to this point where I'm watching like, you know, like 3 movies in a week in a theater.
Sure.
Like, definitely wasn't like that. I didn't have the paychecks to do that. But like the sound design in this movie, I think just absurd. I like, this is feels like such of like, not to like compare it to like Dune or something, but it is just like such a like such a spectacle to watch this movie for the first time. Like, just like I get chills like even when I watch it for the third time, when I see them like arrive, like when they drop down. That shot is just like so iconic to me at this point in time. And I'm wearing like big headphones watching this movie, and I'm like, man, like this is just like the perfect background to like a cool idea that they're going through that really hits me.
And that's the thing too. I love that you brought up the sound, and yeah, it was crazy in a theater because I was actually really scared the first time I watched it because I truly thought it was going to be. And that's the thing with some of these movies sometimes is the way that they're marketed. Like I genuinely thought it was going to end in like a giant third act where there's like army ships and tanks shooting these
alien fleets coming. Yeah,
it's like War of the Worlds. It's like a sequel to War of the Worlds. I'm like, when's Tom Cruise going to start running?
Yeah.
But so the sound design was really effective in that regard because it does do a good job of making these creatures feel threatening and imposing. And the beauty is later on in the film, they just need our help. But the thing about Villeneuve and the teams he always puts together is they do a great job, even watching it in a theater with headphones on a laptop. I could argue they do such a good job of immersing you in what's happening, and you really feel there. And just the way just the way the sound design is and the production design and the cinematography, when you're in that hollow ship, you feel like you're in there with them, and I could yell and hear an echo off the wall or something. So it's why a film like Dune swept the tech categories. It's why this movie won, I think, sound editing and sound mixing when there were still 2 awards. I know it's just sound now. But from a technical standpoint, once again, he puts together just a god tier team time and time again.
Every time. Yeah, like it really does. Like even like simple stuff like this. Like I don't know why it always like reaches out to me, but like just the military base, it makes you like every sound coming is like, okay, I'm on a military base, especially like when you're immersed, like you got the headphones on, or if you're in a theater, you're like, okay, I'm on a military base right now. There's helicopters flying, you hear like troops walking and stuff like that. And then yeah, like when you're on the actual like pod with the aliens, there's constant sounds coming from all sides of your headphones. Like it was honestly a really good watch with like nice headphones for once, where like it just keeps hitting you on different sides. Yeah, I really love the sound design in this movie. It might be one of my favorite sound designs from Denis' catalog. Like, I'm trying to think of other like sound design movies from him where it really sticks out, and I think this is probably my favorite.
It's my favorite of his as well. Dune's a close second, and then they do some pretty clever stuff in Blade Runner as well.
Oh yeah.
But I think that's an excellent opinion that it is right up there at the top in terms of sound. And the only thing I wish, and it's hard to go back in time, is the AMC's by me. They didn't start putting in the Dolby Cinema until like a couple years ago. So if I would have seen this in a Dolby Cinema with that vision and that moving audio, I would have.
Mm-hmm.
I might have ascended to the different stratus, to a different stratus.
Straight to the projector. Yeah.
Straight to the projector.
Yeah, when watching this movie, like, I don't want to bring in Morbius to this somehow and somehow loop it in, but like I watched this right before I watched it, and this is like the least corny movie imaginable. And there's honestly like ample opportunity for it to be corny with some line deliveries. I only like wrote down one thing about it being corny, and it's at the end with the husband where like he has this line. It's like, I've been looking up all my life. meeting aliens wasn't the coolest thing. It was meeting you. He said something like that, and I'm like, okay, that's a little corny, but everything else in this movie like is so like grounded for it being an alien movie. And then I watch Morbius and I hear like the quotes that are like being spoken to me, and I'm like, holy crap! Like it's so nice that I just watched Arrival and I can like get like a good movie out of the way, and then I can just like appreciate how bad this really is.
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up. I agree with you with that one line in the movie is a little corny. And what's funny is I feel like this happens to Renner a lot. Have you ever seen what's the name? Wind River
No,
with Renner and Elizabeth Olsen?
I've heard of it. I have the poster in my head, but I haven't watched it.
It's pretty good, but what's funny is that movie, it's a good movie, but he plays like a not like a cowboy, but like a modern day sheriff protector of this town. And they load him up with quotes like that, like the whole movie. Like they're not gonna spoil it for you, but there's a scene where like they're talking about wolves and then trying to find this like killer, and the cops are like, where are you going to look? And he goes, I'm going up there. And they're like, why? And he's like, because like you said, he's a wolf. And what do wolves do? They hunt. And then he just like turns around and walks away. And I'm like, oh, but he probably ate it up and thought it was like the best role of his career.
Yeah. Like as he spoke, he probably thought like everybody just like put their palm over their mouth. Like, wow, he just said that. Oh God. Yeah, I really like wanted to nitpick this movie this time around because I'm like, look, I've already ranked it in my Denis video. I've seen it a few times now. Like, let's really get in the nitty gritty of like what's bad with this movie, and I really couldn't find much. Like, I extend this question to you. Like, do you have any other problems with this movie? I have one, but I want to see what you have first.
When I tell you I try every time, because I'm with me ever since I started. So I used to write for a site. I used to do a podcast for a different site. It's no longer around. I'm doing some stuff on TikTok, and I have this other podcast. Like I said, I try not to always like, I feel like people are using the word like hyperbolic or hyperbole a lot now. Because we have so much quick access to Twitter and stuff that we want our thoughts to be like the thoughts. And I've had times where I'm like, oh, I was probably way over the top. That's not how I felt. Which is fine. But with this movie, dude, I promise you, every time I watch it, I go, okay, is it just because I really like this so much? I try to find nitpicks, and I can't. I really can't. The only thing I'll say, if I need to reach for one, because you said that you have one, so I do want to give one. I don't want to be like the it's perfect guy, because art is all subjective. But I will say I feel like the movie could be just a tad shorter. I do think there's like one or two of the flash forwards where you're like, okay, or the flashbacks where you're like, okay. And I do think the ending where she's on the phone with the leader of China is beautiful, but at the same time, it's I wish they did something where they were showing like 3 timelines at once. So she had to do something in the past, she was doing something now, and then she was in the future hearing it. That's just a nitpick, though. I feel like the resolution is really fast in terms of like all the countries unite. She starts her monologue, the movie ends. While I love it, I think so. To end this ramble, I think it could have been like a little shorter in the middle and pump a little bit more pizzazz at the end. But that's literally just me thinking of something that I could possibly nitpick. Other than that, no, I think it's a flawless movie. I think it's pretty much perfect, in my humble opinion.
I absolutely love that scene with her calling the Chinese leader, because it's like so like it's so outrageous, and then you see like what happened after, and like when you get that reveal, you're like, oh wow, like you could see why like that had that effect. But the one nitpick I had was I thought the bombing scene was a little like they were just trying to add drama where it wasn't really needed, because like I don't know, like, do you really think some like rogue soldiers would just like find like TNT and try to blow up the aliens? Like that felt like something so forced and it kind of added tension, but it did add to like that scene was really cool with her blowing backwards and the alien
Yeah.
saving her. That's where like it's still a nitpick because it does lead to one of my favorite scenes because that also is like one of like the coolest visually stimulating parts of the movie. And it's like and the alien saving her, and that you could argue that roots with some of the themes.
100%. And you know what? I agree with you. So when I say I think the middle could be shorter, I do think about that scene sometimes because you're right. It is interesting that those soldiers like think that's gonna blow up the aliens. Like maybe it'll just open up and the aliens will come out and the world's over. And like, thanks, dude, for
Yeah,
ending the world. Like, oh yeah, you thought that dynamite was gonna kill those two aliens. There's six other shit, or
yeah, like
there's
hero ball,
multiple
man.
other yeah, right, like there's multiple other ships, dude. You're not doing, you thought you did something. So I will totally give you that because there are times when I rewatch it and I know that part's coming and I'm looking to get past it just so I could get to her actually in the ship talking to I always forget which one lives, if it's Abbott or Costello, but um you're right. It does lead to a breathtaking scene and
Hmm.
the biggest twist of the movie, but I'll give that to you. That was like the studio went, we need one explosion. Give it,
They're like, come
please.
on, we can't sell this alien movie
Yeah.
unless we got some fleets or we got an explosion. We need murder. We
Like,
need attempted
please,
murder.
please, dear God, high schoolers will be in this theater. We need one
Come on.
Michael Bay level explosion. Call him, ask him how to do it.
Good. Yeah, I mean, other than that, like, I actually thought the pacing of this movie is really good.
Hmm.
Like I do agree that the middle part is definitely the lagging part of this movie. But other than that, like, I remember I was watching it sitting here and I was multitasking, so I had to pause it once or twice. And I paused it and it was like 45 minutes, and I'm like, I swear I just threw this movie on. Like, I like how quickly, like, she enters that classroom and, like, 2 minutes later, like, it's already, like, all hell is raining. Like, it's absurd, like, how quick this movie moves at first. And it does halt just a little bit, but I think I don't know. I didn't have a huge problem with how this movie was paced. Like, sure, a few things could have gotten cut here and there, but I think this is like one of his shortest movies.
Yeah, yeah, really good pacing. The most unrealistic thing though in the whole film is the minute those students walk in there and see half of them are gone, I'm turning, like, I'm not sitting
Yeah, why
down.
would you go?
I'm
Be like,
not
oh,
sitting
school's
down. Yeah,
out.
yeah, man, I'm not sitting down. So kudos to those try hard students who
I
sat
like
there.
it.
No disrespect. We have a speech pathologist and a chemist here, so we know how important school is. But man, if I show up and there's some weird stuff happening, apparently I'm out. I'm sorry.
I'm
I'm
taking the
sorry,
first
Dr.
excuse
Banks.
not to show up. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry,
Dr.
Ms.
Banks.
Meg. Yeah, I ain't coming. Yeah, I mean, there's a few other things I have in my notes, but like I got chills when the sirens went off the first time. I was like, man, they really like they made this world building so effective. Where I'm like, wow, there might be like aliens tomorrow if I heard those sirens. Like, and you got the cars like running into each other. Just everybody's off. Like
Everyone's off.
I really do love the intro of this movie.
It's and that's why, and just to kind of bring that topic to another one, if that's cool with you, is the movie starts off, it's absolute banger of an opening to a movie because it sets the tension so well. But what it does more importantly is it sets the tension for potentially this catastrophic alien horror movie, right? And then there's this sense of uncertainty and dread and this sense of urgency to figure out these aliens, right? Because something bad's going to happen. And then the twist happens when she goes, who is this child? And figures out the weapon is time and how time is nonlinear. And why I think this movie is a masterpiece is in that moment, the twist completely changes everything you just watched. It
Mm-hmm.
completely changes what the movie is even about and going for. And by the end, you're like, I went into this, if you're a first time viewer, right? Or even the way it's presented in the first third, even in the first half, I'll argue, it's presented as this like sci-fi thriller about aliens. And it's at the end, it's really this beautiful message about humanity and and love and being able to feel. And there's a quote at the end of Jojo Rabbit that Taika Waititi puts in there from Rilke, I believe the writer they keep alluding to in the film, that says, let everything happen to you, both beauty and terror. No feeling is final. Keep going. So it's it just changes the whole game, and it's good sci-fi, because to me the main part, what a lot of sci-fi projects and movies get caught up in is like the what's going on, right? The ships or the explosions or the aliens, and they lose sight of the why. But this movie is all the why. It is the aliens, and the conflict with the countries are almost a backdrop, and it's really a story about a woman who, like we keep alluding to, is gifted this beautiful burden of experiencing all of life at once, and is making the choice to live it instead of not at all. And I'm telling you, when I get emotional during this movie, I get very emotional during this movie for that reason. And it's hard for me to watch it with people, because this is one that I have such a connection to where, like, if it's not hitting for you, which it's very hard when I'm watching it, someone for it to hit them harder than it's hitting me, even on like my 13th viewing of it. I don't know how many, it's probably not 13. But I want all those same emotions to come out when someone is watching it for the first time or even on a rewatch. So that's my way of segueing into, like, it starts off like you said, it's tense, it's almost scary, it's thrilling, and then by the end of the movie it's this giant reflection piece of your
Mm-hmm.
own morality and life decisions. And I do like how Jeremy Renner has a quote where, when she asked him, you know, if you could see your whole life from start to finish, would you change things? And it's so incomprehensible to him, where he's like, well, maybe I would be a little like nicer to people. I'm like, yeah, I would too, right? Like if you knew the weight of every single one of your actions and encounters and could replay them over and over, yeah, I would want to do everything as nice and good as possible, because, you know,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
I can see it, you know?
yeah, I like how you put it. Like, this is the movie with all the why, because that's the entire movie, is investigating this why. But like, what I really do love about this movie is how, like, it is like a big ploy and a big trap that the writers and the editing in this movie get you in, where like you just assume that the daughter already died, and that she, you know, and you already assume it's her daughter, and then when the line first comes up of who is that girl? You're like, what? Did you say that again? What? Like, the first time you watch that, that is such a crazy twist. Like, the husband twist, that's a twist too. This twist is just like, this entire movie is being played in the wrong order. It's like, did they screw up here yet? Like, you kind of have to, like, watch the rest of the movie and be like, okay, now I gotta think about it for 30 minutes. Because I really was confused the first time I watched this movie. I, like, kind of got some of the underlying themes, but I was like, I just need to, like, replay every scene and, like, put it in order.
No,
Like, that's how I
absolutely.
viewed it.
And I love how you brought that up too, because you're right. The concept of her daughter hits so hard, because we're shown the death already. So there's like an emotional buy-in, and then we see all these cute flashbacks, which we think are flashbacks, and then flashbacks where she knows she's gonna die, and it keeps building this weight. And then you're like, wait, how does she not even know this kid? Who is that? And then that reveal happens, and you're like, oh my god, she just knows this all is gonna happen. And I totally get, like, I don't think, like, looking back, it was like pretty much 6 years ago. I don't know if I got everything the first time either. I think I got enough to feel, because it's a movie. I didn't rewatch it in theaters. I think I waited till after the Oscars, because I like was hoping, it's like way before I like looked into like the predictions and
Yeah,
stuff.
award season,
So
yeah.
I went into it like, I hope it wins Best Picture, and then I was shocked that like Amy Adams wasn't nominated. I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't until I rewatched it after, and a lot of those things came in, because you're right. The first time I try to, and I can't do this all the time. I try my best when I'm watching something for the first time, to really leave any expectation at the door. It's hard for me with the comic book movies because if you like me and choose to keep listening to me, you and people who are listening or watching this, I do a lot of comic book stuff, a lot of comic book movie stuff. So those I have a lot of love for the source material. So it's harder for me to leave my thoughts at the door when I go into it. But for movies like this, I really try. But I feel like there's something about with the way we're wired now, especially in 2022. You see reviews early on Twitter. Everyone can put their thoughts
It's
everywhere
nonstop.
within
Yep.
seconds. So it's hard to like, it was hard to, for me at the time, go into Arrival and be like, oh, it's going to be this like alien war movie. Like, so when it ended, I was able to adjust by the end of the movie and feel those moments. But it ended, I'm like, oh, that was pretty beautiful,
I mean,
but it's not till you rewatch it and I'm like, oh, that was the whole point. Like the aliens, who cares about the aliens by the end of the movie? Like they're such an afterthought.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's part of the reason of like why I really like doing these film festivals is like, you know, like especially for Sundance when it hasn't premiered anywhere else. Like you get that with no expectations, it really keeps you honest when watching a movie. Like you really don't go down any path of like, oh, I saw this review, like this thought's in my head. And it really like for me, I noticed myself being a lot more critical when I watch those movies. And I'm like, okay, I really like making my own, you know, assessment of a movie without having all of these thoughts in my head before I watch it. So like when I go back and watch movies like this where I'm like, for me, when I watch movies, I really just care about the director. That's the main person I care about. So like that's already like an expectation I'm coming into this movie with when I watch it for the first time. Mm-hmm. But thankfully on the first time for this movie, like I wasn't huge into film, so like I didn't even know who Denis Villeneuve was. And now he's like my favorite director pretty much.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Like now I could be like, oh, there's a new Denis movie. I'm sure it's okay. Yeah. Now I'm like, oh, Denis Villeneuve. Oh, he's the best director of all time. Oh, he's French Canadian. Oh, blah blah blah. And I'm like all this. Yeah, shoot all that out. Yeah, I mean, expectations are a huge part of movies and how you really feel about it. Like I just saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, and you look at those reviews. It's got a 9 on IMDb. It's like one of the highest scores I've ever seen. Like it's hard to walk into it and be like, okay, this is gonna be. Okay, it's gonna be probably perfect. You know,
and it's got like the highest letterbox. Like it beat Parasite, right? So now it's like a 4.6. So. I'm supposed to see it today, by the on the day we're recording. So I'll definitely let you know my thoughts. But you're right. Like with that one too, I've seen a lot of big things about it. So I got to go in there and be like, no, I'm just watching this movie as me as Nikko right now.
Yep, just me. Else. That's why I love that car ride home with the friend I bring every time. I'm like, oh, what's he got to say? Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
What's funny? Yeah, real quick. Sorry. What's funny too is you brought up how Villeneuve is one of your favorite directors at the moment. I completely echo that. What's funny is I feel like there's a few like really basic film Twitter takes. And that's not to insult them, but they're just like things you see, or maybe it's my algorithms because I'm such a fan of his. But like everyone loves him, and what's so funny is like it's such a common take that he's like the best in the game right now. But I actually agree with it. Like I'm like, yeah, he doesn't miss. Like I get it. So like when I see 20 people tweet about him that he's like the best director of now, I'm like, yeah. Yeah, right.
I mean, for me, like, I swear I had this stake way before Dune, because Dune definitely, like, put him on the Twitter sphere a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, film Twitter already knew about Denis and all those movies he's made, but, like, Dune is definitely, like, another audience that, like, once you introduce, like, film Twitter to Dune people, you're like, okay, you're only going to hear love for Denis, and then, like, when they see how he is in front of the camera, they're going to think he's adorable, because he's adorable.
Yeah.
Yeah, like him and Steve McQueen are my top 2 directors, I'd say. And
legends.
Like, I really can't think of a bad movie he's made.
And
I had this right in the middle of the pack. And it's still like an 8 or 9 out of 10 for me. So
love that. It's a 10 for me. It's 5 stars, as you could assume, right? As you could assume. But I will say,
right when you told me what you do, I knew it was
right?
gonna be a 10.
Right, because you had you actually had one of my co-hosts on Zennik to do the Prestige, and he has it like in the middle of the pack too. But what's funny is like I don't think you could go wrong with most of his films when you rank them. Like it's the only one I'll say like if I see it at number one, I'm like, wow, that's a really inspired choice. Probably Enemy. Like if you have Enemy like number one, which I won't lie to you, I have not seen your Villeneuve rank. Where is Enemy for you? I'm so curious.
I have Enemy at I think like 5,
Okay,
something like that.
yeah. I've seen some people put that at 1, and I'm like, wow, that's really inspired. Like, I respect the hell out of that, but I'm also like, I think
I have it
the
at
other ones,
5.
yeah,
Yep.
5. Okay, yeah,
Yeah. I have this like pretty much tied with Arrival.
Okay, cool. And that's fair, and that's totally fair. It's literally the giant spoiler alert. Sorry, literally the giant spider at the end like makes the movie. Like it just makes the movie.
A lot of people, yeah, I agree with you. Like a lot of people think that movie's a lot better than it is because the ending is so like shocking. A lot of people are like
it
that.
scared the hell out of me the first time I watched it. And
Yeah.
ironically, I'm a big Spider-Man fan. He's my favorite character of all time, but I hate spiders. So when I saw that, I was like, "Oh my lord, have mercy!" But this is also dope.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Enemy is definitely like the smaller scale, like super ambitious movie that it, like, you know, like Arrival. I'm trying to think of the budget off the top of my head versus Enemy. I think this movie was like 75 mil or something, if I'm right. I could be
That
wrong,
sounds right. It was
50 mil. 50 mil.
50.
So that sounds about right.
And it made 200. That's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I do not remember it making that much. And like for those like your audience probably understands that more. My mainly comic book film audience is like, oh, that's nothing because they're used to the films hitting $1 billion. But I'm like, no, 200 mil for this kind of movie in 2016 on a budget of 50. That's really impressive. That's really impressive.
Apparently, Enemy had about the same budget. That's crazy to me.
It's all because of
that makes me think Arrival is a little more bang for its buck.
I think it's because they had to pay Jake Gyllenhaal twice. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, true.
They had to pay Jake Gyllenhaal twice.
God, he's like 30 mil to 50 mil then, damn.
Hell yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, do you have any other notes about this movie? I think I got about everything that I have.
I pretty much hit everything. The only thing I'll say is the only last thing I'll say is that and this might sound hyperbolic, but I'll own this take, is that I do think this is Amy Adams' best acting performance. I really do. I do, because it's so subtle, and I could only imagine as the actor knowing the script and her actually knowing that, and yes, they're professional actors, so like it's what they do, but a lot of actors talk about sometimes when you know what's going to happen, you start to like telegraph it, and she really sells all the twists well, and just the moment, like I said, it's so subtle. If you rewatch it, when Hannah says daddy and it shows Renner and then it cuts right back to her and she looks at him, like I don't know how she was able to capture so many emotions with just a look, but she does. And I think the score helps. But it is my favorite Amy Adams performance. I do think it's her best one, and I am very sad that she wasn't nominated at the Academy Awards for it. But other than that, what an absolute banger of a movie.
Oh yeah. I want to say I 100% agree with that Amy Adams take. The only problem is I might have to throw in Nocturnal Animals, because I have such an affection towards Nocturnal Animals, but I do think she is better in Arrival. I would have to watch both of them again, probably within the same day, to make that assessment. But you can definitely
probably convince me. What's funny is you could probably convince me with Nocturnal Animals, and I could try to convince you with Arrival.
Yeah, we definitely have arguments for both sides, but like I don't think that's a crazy take when like you look at all of her movies. Like, Yeah, I do think it is Arrival, probably. Shit.
Especially recently, and like it's not her fault because like she brings it. I think she brings it every time, and even in a movie like Hillbilly Elegy, like say what you want about the movie, but she's just doing her thing and going crazy in that movie. I think she's good in there too. But this is the movies she's picked recently, I think, haven't been as strong. So I think that just helps Arrival stand out a little more too. That could be it, but man, it's this is the performance that I start thinking of when I think of Amy Adams.
Yeah.
She also plays a great Lois Lane in Man of Steel. Very underrated.
I was about to bring
Very
that
underrated.
up. Like, did you like since I knew you were a comic book guy, I was like, how is she in Batman v Superman or something like that?
I think she's pretty good in those. I think she captures the spunk and the fire of Lois. Not necessarily the charming side, but I think she gets a lot right. And you know, it's Amy Adams, so she's pretty much always a walking dub when it comes to a performance.
Yeah, I will say Arrival is more of her movie than Nocturnal Animals is her movie.
True.
Like, there's a lot more performances going on in that movie, but in Arrival, this is like wholeheartedly her movie. The other performances are great. Forrest Whitaker's great in this movie. Jeremy Renner's good in this movie. But like, come on, you can't not just say Amy Adams is like one of the main reasons we really do like this film is her performance, and obviously the super tight script and one of the most uniquely edited scripted movies. Well, sweet. That sounds like enough for me. Yeah, I would probably give it about. I think I have it rated as an 8. I'll stick with an 8. That sounds like a good number to me.
I love that. I'm a 10. I'm a 10. I'm 2 hands up, my friend.
Own it.
2 hands up. Own it. Own it.
Never be sad about it.
Absolutely.
Don't let anybody shame you.
My man. Appreciate you.
Alrighty, well, if they need to find you, where should they find you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is Twitter. It's at Nikko Caruso. That's at NIKKOCARUSO. I also do film reviews on Letterboxd. That's my new way of doing things. I am working on a YouTube channel that will hopefully happen probably around the fall. Yeah, I used TikTok was like my kind of trial run for it, just to be in front of a camera and be comfortable with myself. And then I do, if you are someone who is listening to the show and is into more of the comic book films, the Star Wars and comic book TV shows, I do have a show called The Vigilante 1939, wherever you get your podcasts at. In my opinion, it's a pretty cool show because I do it with a very good friend of mine who is on this show talking about the Prestige, but I do it with my father as well. It's something that we have a lot in common, our love for the genre and for the material, and he always wanted to do a podcast. So right before COVID, we started one, and 3 years later we're still going strong. So come find me, come tweet at me. I love to talk, I love to hang out, and I'm so honored and thrilled that you let me come on your show. It was great talking to you. We've tweeted at each other a bit, so it was cool to actually hear your voice and quite literally communicate like Arrival was telling us to do. It's always better that way, right?
That is the real reason why we even did this. We wanted to test the themes of Arrival.
We did. Except there's no aliens that we know of. Yeah.
I was going to say, just wait on it. They said every 3,000 years. You don't know what year it's going to be.
I am holding out for a potential sequel one day called Departure. Right?
I actually kind of laughed when they said Departure in the movie. I was like, hey, they said it.
it's like the Leo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, oh, the one right there. Yeah. Alrighty, well, I'm going to call it there. See you guys.